Data upload in progress, huh? Now let's see. Let's see how this works. All right, Toothers, I'm experimenting today. See if I chew up my data plan at the same time. I've been away for a little while. Um, yeah, I am driving, but I'm not recording video, so hopefully I don't look at myself at the phone and realize that it's not me and, hit a tree. But realistically, I got really excited to do the podcast, and I built out email addresses and started doing I built a YouTube channel. I built all kinds of stuff for this. And, I was in therapy and I was feeling really good about that experience. And then had a few rugs pulled out from underneath and became a problem. And I wasn't emotionally kind of able to do anything. And I don't know, being able to do it with consistency is difficult with work and life at the moment. But I feel like doing something. I feel compelled to do something. So, I figured maybe they'll start just randomly commenting on things. For the 3.5 of you that even know this exists, and the 2 of you that actually listen to it, I guess 3 if you include me. But I thought in terms of doubling down on the whole toothless concept, I would call these fillings, because they're just filling time, so to speak. I haven't come up with other clever names for anything else. Regular shows, like, are those root canals? Like, what am I going to call those? But for now, I thought if I could do some kind of commenting on kind of just what's going on, maybe just to add another perspective, another voice to the cacophony of white noise, cacophony of white noise about what's going on in the world. It's tough to keep up with all the news happening and all the people out there that are doing this legitimately, and they have researchers and they have staff, and again, people that actually like being in front of cameras and talking to people, as opposed to anxiety-ridden fat men who just like to ramble. But here we are. Maybe it'll become something. Maybe it'll just be me trying to rationalize my need to hear myself talk to myself, largely. And maybe it'll spark a conversation, and we'll see. But I think, kind of more importantly, just in terms of where things are at, I think sometimes it's tough to give up your dreams, but I've done it a few times, and I think what I'm trying to do is change how I wanted my dreams, how I thought my dreams were going to go, right? I wanted to write. I had story ideas. I've got a couple hundred pages of notes for several novels I had planned, but I don't have that. I don't have that the way I used to. I started some fan fiction with some stuff that I enjoyed, but I don't know that I can do that anymore. I feel like I've lost a part of myself that would allow me to craft, a story like that. I'm thinking about other ways maybe to bring some of what I've created to the table. Maybe I can't get to that level of depth. Maybe I do something more like a History Channel thing, like, let's look at the history of this place. Something more higher level in terms of scope. I don't know. Right now, I'm just so saddled with different work stuff that I'm not sure what I'm doing, but we'll see. So I figured this would be a nice outlet for me, creatively, to go ahead and attack again. So I'm glad the first 4.5 minutes are me meandering about how I'm trying to be back. But in terms of what's been going on lately, I mean, what hasn't been going on lately? It's politics kind of dominates my own news cycle, right? I mean, it's hard to get away from. Look at I know they keep saying Trump's an existential threat to democracy. He's an actual threat to democracy. It's not existential. He's a literal threat. I mean, Dick Cheney, the devil's butt crack himself, has come out against Trump on moral grounds. I mean, how ridiculous! How ridiculous do you have to be for that guy to be like, that's too far, man. You're too far. I mean, it's surreal. It's surreal to me. And then there's this Mark Robinson guy who, this is not his first scandal that I'm aware of, but for those of you unaware, CNN found some statements he made on a porn site, commenting on a porn site. I mean, who does that anyway? And some of the things he talks about, like being a black Nazi, which is entertaining. He's, he wishes slavery would come back because he'd buy a couple. One of the other scandals he had earlier was him making a comment how he wished we could go back to when women couldn't vote. I mean, he's a real symbol. He's a real blatant symbol to me of how the Republican Party is splintered to such a degree that a lot of them are regressive, right? They say they're conservative, but they're trying to go back in time. They're not trying to prevent progress. They're trying to remove it. Roe v. Wade is a huge part of that. Different discussions around the coming after contraception. Next, a lot of these people have issues with no-fault divorce, which is ridiculous. It's trying to go back to this idea that men, specifically white men, are superior in every way, and it's probably hyperbole, but superior to everyone else at the very least, and that's ridiculous. As a white man myself, that's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. But when you have a skewed look, I'm not a huge fan of religion, but when you have a skewed perspective of what the religion that you have signed up for states, that just you find some kind of weird justification for being hateful and misogynistic and totalitarian for no good reason, right? There's no good reason for it, even from the sense of being like a progressive thinker, right? I don't need to ignore religion to be progressive. I do because I choose to. I think the big difference, and honestly, there's a clip out there of Anna Kasparian from the Young Turks talking about it, and she says it very eloquently and very directly, and I mean potentially rudely, depending on how you want to take it. But she very clearly states that she's not. I don't care what your personal religious beliefs are, right? There's a difference between having a belief and trying to force it on other people, and the people that seem to want to do that are also the people that complain about entitlement. So they're acting entitled while complaining about people who act entitled. There's a real lack of that self-awareness that let's look at a mirror once in a while to reflect what it is that we're actually saying. And I think that can be tough. It can be tough for people to accept that they're wrong or that they've made a mistake. I make them, and I can't help but own up to them. If I am accused of making a mistake I did not make, though, I do tend to lose my shit a little, which is not a great reaction to it, especially when I haven't actually done anything. I don't like this idea, especially with work, that, oh, well, this is your fault. Like, no, it's not. I did this, and this. This is not my fault. You can fall down a flight of stairs. I'm working on it, though. It's one of the few buttons I still have left to really push. But when I realized I just said this in public, so that should go well on anybody who's decided to comment ever. But ultimately, what was my point? What were we talking about? Yeah, ultimately, I think this Mark Robinson guy really exposes a real problem, and J.D. Vance isn't much better, but J.D. Vance isn't. I don't buy him as a believer. I buy him as an opportunist, right? He's just doing whatever he can to be popular, right? He's a less focused version of Trump in many respects. Trump at least is after power and money, right? I mean, his goals are pretty simple: pay me more, give me more power, don't make me do anything. If anybody remembers that he gave Jared Kushner, I don't know, half of his duties or most of his duties when he was president for a little bit. I mean, it's just ridiculous. He really doesn't. And people, oh, he's good at delegating. He's not. He's a mob boss. He doesn't delegate. He just bullies people. He's a con man. If you just look at his career, his time over decades, I mean, that's all he does. He's just a con man. That's why he can talk about nothing for hours and people are captivated by it. He does have a certain amount of charisma because he's used to BSing his way to getting money to not fulfill on projects, to steal from his own charities, to go bankrupt 6 or 7 times, to be in 3,000 plus lawsuits against him over the course of the last 50 years. It's amazing to me how little people seem to care, because now they're all sycophants and they worship this cult of personality that he's created, he's cultivated, this persona of nonsense that he's been able to get people to believe for a while, and now he's got a significant amount of people in the country believing him. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. But I get the sense that Robinson believes his own rhetoric, believes the things that he's been attributed to saying, the things that we've actually seen him say. It's mind-boggling to me. And the pushback of, oh, well, someone spent all this money on AI to discredit me. Nobody, I don't think anybody's that clever to go back that far, 10 years ago, to a not popular porn site to make these comments attributed to you pretty extensively. It's really difficult, especially given some of the other things you actually said. It's hard to think that somebody's like, oh, well, I could make this up. Like, you're doing a fine job messing yourself up. Just more people need to see it and understand it, which I have no problem with. And look, it's one thing to be a comedian and to say something volatile for the sake of gaining attention or getting a following, and then being called out for it years later. It wasn't ideal, but I mean, comedy's meant to push an envelope, and the envelope gets closed a little bit more. And I'm not saying that comedy is degrading what's funny, or it's just that society's changed, and the things that we thought were funny are different now. And things we don't find as funny, we don't find as funny. That just happens, it changes. And I think comedy, which I will probably talk about periodically in the future, I think comedy is kind of one of those things at the forefront of grasping some of that, because you being on the stage, you find out right away if something works or not, and you find out right away how it works, and you find out right away if it's based on a crowd or a different location, or your different venues, right? The kind of people you're dealing with. It's really a constant test of what people are willing to handle in this day and age. And I think it's good. And I think there are some people that are always going to enjoy jokes that are off color, so to speak. I'd say blue, but I feel like blue is still a specific kind of flavor of jokes. But when you're a politician, you're trying to say what you want, what you think the people want to hear. When you're a comedian, you're saying something that gets them to keep them wanting to pay you. So there's a certain parallel in respects, but I feel like the politicians are more inclined to sell out, to get the money, right? I mean, if we look at the system the way it is, with the lobbying being legal, how much money has come from Israeli interests to keep our country sending them billions of dollars to continue their genocide, right? It's a different model. I've really gone off the rails on this already. It's amazing how my brain cobbles this stuff together. Like, oh, that's connected. It's similar, but it's not. Correlation is not causation. God, I'm gonna have to leave this whole thing in too. I'm gonna want this raw so people can really, really get a sense of what it is to live in my head. But the point being, I mean, people can change, people can grow, and I think it's a matter of figuring out if they have or not, right? I remember the Kevin Hart thing that he said a long time ago. It was a snide comment. He's grown beyond that, but he still stepped away from hosting some award show because of the pushback he got, and it just seems silly to me. You think about, Al Franken stepped down from being a senator for something he did, and it wasn't even. You look at what Clarence Thomas was accused of doing, and he's a Supreme Court justice. Look at the things that Brett Kavanaugh was accused of. He's a Supreme Court justice. Al Franken, I forget exactly what he did, but it was like one incident, and he's like, I better step down, right? There's honor in that, and I'm not a huge Al Franken fan. I didn't really find him all that humorous on Saturday Night Live, but I gotta say, it takes guts to own up to your mistake and be like, you know what? I'm gonna step away. I shouldn't be the person that represents people because I made a miscalculation. I made a misstep. I made a real error in judgment that I need to deal with. I shouldn't keep going forward with this idea that I'm somehow in a position to make these decisions for other people when clearly I'm also making these mistakes, right? I mean, that's a big deal. I feel like it shows that he was taking that job seriously, that position seriously. Meanwhile, you got guys like Matt Gaetz, right? Who I'm not sure I understand completely why the investigation was dropped, but his behavior is hilariously terrifying, right? I mean, just he's such a creep to still be like, oh no, I didn't do anything wrong. Yeah, I mean, the evidence suggests that you definitely did, but he doesn't care. He's just going to keep doing his thing, right? He's going to keep making statements about other people doing what they're doing and saying that they're wrong, but he's fine. He's totally fine. Yeah, it's this inconsistency to me that bothers me, right? It's the hypocrisy. And a big reason why I got out of religion is because of the hypocrisy of the people. I saw too much of do as I say, not as I do. I saw that a lot. And I still see that. And I still see that in definitely in politics. It's really difficult to understand how we've come this far as a country, only to feel like we're facing down a barrel, and this could all go away. Too many times I've heard from people who study history that we're Rome. We're supposed to fall. We're the kingdom that's going to fall. Like all the kingdoms fall at some point. Maybe we got too big for our britches. Maybe we're unable to maintain the level of insanity that we've achieved. People are just riding high on the hog of, hey, I get money, and I just keep lying, and I just keep making these laws that benefit only the super rich, and everybody else suffers. And we keep getting elected because we're the only people that are running, and the only people that are going to have enough money to get our faces out there in order for people to see us, be like, oh, well, that's who I got. The two-party system is a joke. I mean, it's really just largely it's the government of lobbyists and special interests. And I do believe there are a handful of people that are legitimately decent, and they legitimately care, and they legitimately want better for their constituents and for the country itself. I am gonna say I like Bernie Sanders. I like what I've seen from AOC and from I can't remember her name now. She got into a tiff with Marjorie Taylor Greene and talked about her bad butch body. Jamie Crockett, I like her. There's a couple others that that come to mind. But in a long enough timeline, you're going to see things you don't like. Um, you know, Biden, the people that hate Biden probably would have liked him if they had remembered that he's basically an '80s Republican, pro police stances, the civil forfeiture stuff that he pushed through. I mean, it's ridiculously out of hand, the things that the police are able to kind of get away with, thanks in large part to what Biden was doing in the 80s and 90s, when all that stuff happened. While I'm in the car, it's a mess. It's just a mess, and the government, by and large, doesn't look out for the regular people on a day-to-day basis. Right? There are some things they'll throw out there for the sake of an election, or just to present themselves in a better light. But ultimately, I don't think that they care as much anymore. Right? We're not padding their pockets. We're not convincing them that genocide is good and we should clap every time the genocidal leader comes over here to speak to Congress and be like, oh, he's an ally. Yeah, he's slaughtering people. He's starting a larger war in the region. Maybe somebody should stop that, as opposed to just saying, oh, well, they have a right to defend themselves. Yeah, at what point does it stop being defense? Right? This is all I'm saying. That's a whole other subject. But again, this is what the brain does, especially when I'm driving. Yeah, so I don't know that I have anything else to add at the moment. I'm about to get into some more annoying traffic, so I should probably pay more attention. But it's been an interesting attempt to come back to get my feet back under me. We'll see how the editing process goes, and if I keep any, but I may, warts and all, right? Be able to just this is who I am. Take it or I don't know, move on. I mean, plenty of other podcasts, plenty of other YouTubers, plenty of other people out there to spend your time on. And I've got a handful of them that I prefer, even over listening to myself. So we'll see how this all goes. But I appreciate any of you that are still sticking around and still willing to give me an opportunity to chew up some of your time.